Hey, welcome back to my shop. I'm Earl. This is Earl's small segmenting shop. Today, I want to talk about carbide tools and why not use them. Well, the first thing I want to say is I turn wood because I like to. I turn segmented pieces because I like turn segmented pieces. Other people turn other things. A lot of people turn pens, bottle stoppers, bowls. People turn green wood. People turn all kinds of things, and mostly because that's what they like to do. And so, when it comes to turning tools, when I first started turning, I had a Harbor Freight lathe on wheels that I'd roll out on the carport. Money was a little bit tight, and so I couldn't afford the expensive tools. I could just barely afford the Harbor Freight lathe. So I looked for alternatives, and what I found was called an Olin tool, which is nothing but a HSS bit used really for metal lathes, put into a steel shaft and used for turning. And they're cheap and easy to make, and that's what I did. And I started turning with them. And that way I didn't have to buy the expensive tools or the expensive sharpening equipment and sharpen these just on a regular old grinder. And I turned a few pieces, and then I turned a fairly big piece on this Harbor Freight lathe using these Olin tools. And I took first place, I took best in show on a National Jured Fine Arts exhibition, and I won quite a bit of money on that piece. And later I sold the piece for enough money that I could actually afford to build a shop with what I made on the one piece. And I realized that I could turn anything with these tools. And it wasn't hard, very easy to use, and they cut good enough. And people would tell me, well, you're not a real wood turner unless you turn with the classic tools, basically the gouge. Well, I decided I don't need to turn with a gouge. Like I said, I turn for my enjoyment, so why not turn with the tools I enjoy? And I continued using them. And as time went on, I took many best of shows. I took a best of show in a woodworking show, North Carolina woodworking show. I took best of show. I took many first place in wood turning, second place, third place. I took in second place, third place in National Fine Jured Art Show. I've had my own private show 3 times, and so I'm still using the same tool, and it works good for me. It's no problem at all. It cuts fine. But you got the people, namely mostly the old timers, that are set on the fact that you're not a wood turner unless you learn to use the gouge. But I don't feel I need to learn to use the gouge. I don't have any use for it. Don't have to have the expensive equipment, don't have to buy the expensive tools. Well, by and by, they come out with the carbide tools, and the original ones come out on a square shaft. So I got a set of square shaft tools. This is just the round one. I'm only going to show the round one, but I got a full set with a square and a diamond. And this is the square shaft tool. Carbide tool. This is a 16 millimeter bit. And I tried them, and they cut good, but being a square shaft, you have to come in straight on them, and they're pretty aggressive. They cut good, but you can't get to fine cuts with them. They're really aggressive. So what I did at that time was I made a set on round shafts. Well, making a set on round shafts allows me, I can still come in straight and get the aggressive cuts, but I can also turn it and get shear cuts and get fine cuts. The more I turn it, the sheer cut I get, and the finer cut I get. And I liked using the carbides on a round shaft. Of course, I still use my olden tools too. But today I want to talk just about the carbide, so we'll put the olden tool away. Now the carbide tools, people are going to tell you, well, they're just beginner's tools, or you're not really a wood turner if you use carbide tools. But again, like I say, I do it for my enjoyment, and I'm going to use the tools that I enjoy using. And I find that these carbide tools cut just as good as anything else. Of course, they're a scraper, but they're a sharp scraper, and they work fairly good. So, I made a full set on round shafts. I actually made a couple with a smaller diameter bits. In fact is, I made this one. I made a video on how to make this tool. It's got the very small bit on it. It's good for tight places. And it's not hard to make. The hardest part is getting a flat spot on the shaft. And then I decided to look into different tools, and I seen from Banggood they got carbide tools for sale on a round shaft. There's companies now making them on a round shaft. So I bought this tool from Banggood. It's a $30 tool, made in China. And I figured, well, let's see what it's like. I got this tool, and it's surprisingly good. It really surprised me. The handle, of course, is just a machine-turned handle, but it's quite useful. I mean, it's a good handle. Of course, if you don't like it, any wood turner can take the handle off, make his own handle, and put it on. But the most important thing is the shaft, how well it's made. And this is a well-polished shaft. And what I'm going to show you is the machining on the end. Let me take this bit off here. I was quite surprised to see that this has been well machined so that the bit actually fits on there perfectly. A 16 millimeter bit. Now Banggood does make others for smaller bits, but they make a full set of these. I only bought the round one, but they make one for the square and the diamond, same way. And the 16 millimeter bits fit on here perfectly. Now I don't know how good the bit is that come with it, but what I did was I bought a full set of 16 millimeter round bits. I bought 10 of them, which you can get fairly cheap. I got these from Amazon, and that way I can always have one that's sharp. And I found that you can actually turn anything with carbide bits. I don't care what people say. I don't really care that they say, well, they're just learner's bits or learner's tools, or that they're not really wood turning tools. I could care less about that. So I'm going to go ahead, and in this video I'm going to show a little bit of turning and how you can come in straight and get an aggressive cut, but you can also turn it up, angle it up, and get sheer cuts. And in one spot in the video, I've got a piece that I inlaid, and I took a bit and I shear cut it off so that I could start sanding at 280 grit. So you can get shear cuts. Now, I've got a piece up on the lathe now that's soft maple, soft figure maple, which again you're going to get ingrain tear out. This is the bottom piece of a segmented turning, so I do have ingrain on the bottom piece. And people will tell you, well, you need to get a real sharp gouge and go in there and cut it and minimize the tear out. Of course, you're always going to get tear out, but you can minimize it. But if you take a tool, get a good sharp bit, and get a good shear angle, you can actually minimize it just as much. Now I know I'm going to get an argument, and people say, well, you can't get it as nice as you can with a gouge, but I believe you can. And I'm sure the people will disagree with me, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So, I have got a full set on round shafts, and like I said, you can do anything with them, and I have made many a good turnings with just, well, basically with a Olin tool, but it's the same thing as with a carbide. And I'm going to go ahead and do this whole turning here with carbide bits, starting with the base. Now what I'm going to do is take this $30 Banggood tool, and I'm going to go in and take out material and dish this out a little bit. Later, after I get a couple of rings glued on, then I'm going to turn it into the first ring and get some shear cuts on it to get rid of as much tear out as I can. But right now I'm not too much worried about the tear out, just removing the material to get it a good dish in here. I've already got some. I'm just going to make a few passes here on it. As you can see, there's no problem at all cutting in there, getting that hollowed out. So like I said, I just made a few passes. Next I'm going to glue on some segments. This is going to be open segment. After I get 2 rows on, then I'll go in and turn into the first row and make some shear cuts, get rid of as much of this ingrain tear out as I can. Okay, so how do you use the carbide tool? If you come in holding it flat and straight, you'll get a maximum cut. It's quite aggressive. If you angle it down a little bit, you're still good. You can still cut. But if you angle it up, drop the handle down, you're going to get a catch. Because it's it's more than 90 degrees between the bit and the wood. So you got to keep it straight or angle it down a little bit. Now, if I rotate it 45, I'll get a good shear cut. If I rotate it more, I can get more of a shear cut. Now this, I'm going to start turning the inside. I got the bottom turned some. And it's open segment, so I'm not going to be quite so aggressive. I'm going to turn it about 45 and bring it in and start cutting. I'm going to cut in to this second ring. I'm not going to cut the top ring. Then I'm going to make a real shear cut across the bottom where the end grain is. A really sheer cut. Let me get some light. Now people tell you can't get the tear out good with a scraper. But this tear out's almost gone. A little bit of sanding, I can get it now. So that's, now, got that. I'm going to wait till I put on more to do the rest of the inside. Okay, I've already turned the very bottom in here. And I'm going to finish turning the inside now. And I'm going to use the carbide tools for this. I'm going to use the round shaft one. And I'll start by taking pretty good cuts with it. And then as I get close to the finish, I'm going to turn it up so I get a shear cut and take some light shear cuts when I finish. So I'm going to finish turning the inside with this. Normally I'd use an Olin tool, but I'm using this carbide on a round shaft now. Like I said, pretty aggressive at first. And then later as I get close, I'll turn it up and make some light shear cuts so I won't have to do so much sanding. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn the outside also with carbide tools. This has got a solid base on it, so naturally there's some end grain on the base. So I'm going to take a tool, and I'm going to turn it where it's taking some really sheer cuts and come across the base to finish it up here. And after I do that, it should be ready to sand. It's all pretty smooth. Couple of spots yet here where I still got to hit. I see right here there's a spot. But I'm going to take some real sheer cuts with it right now. And because of the end grain here in the bottom. That should do it. Shouldn't take much sanding at all now. This Debunking, the tear out ain't too bad on it, so that's as good as you can do with any tool. So I'm going to go ahead and start sanding it now. You can see the kind of turnings I get with a carbide tool. And this is dried bubinga and Makassar ebony. So this is getting some pretty good cuts. Okay, I've got the voids filled. I've got the copper put in. Now I'm going to have to very lightly turn them down to where they're smooth. Again, I'm going to use a round carbide on a round shaft and turn it up where I can get a good shear cut. Now this piece, I sanded it with 80 grit to get out all the tool marks and tear outs on it, with whatever might be on it. Then I made a quick pass with all the other grits, 100, 120, 150, 180, 220, 240, 280, 320, and 400, just up to 400. Now, what I'm going to do is take a round carbide cutter and I'm going to make some really fine shear cuts across here till I get this all evened out. And then I'll probably start with about 280 sandpaper. We'll see after I get it cut. Okay, I've got them all ready to sand. And because I used a very light cut and a shear angle, I'm going to start sanding about 240, maybe even 280. That'll be coarse enough to do it. Now I'm going to take them all the way up now. Take them all the way up to 800. Then I'll use the Scotch-Brite pads on them. Now, sharpening them is easy. Diamond plate, 300 on one side, 600 on one side. I'm going to use the 600 side. A little bit of lubricant, just a little. Take the bit, turn it upside down on it. Just a few times around. And it's sharp. It's real sharp. That's basically all there is to it. Well, there you have it. I'm using carbide tools. They're not that hard to learn to use. And I know if you go to a turning school, all the ones I've seen are going to show you how to use gouges. Nobody's going to show you how to use the carbide tools. And that's a funny thing. I know the club, if you tell them, well, I like to turn pens, that's fine. If I like to turn bowls, that's great. If I like to turn segments, that's good. If I like to turn a little bit of everything, that's a good also. And if I use a lathe, whatever lathe I use is good. Usually it's the one I want or the one I can afford. But when it comes to tools, it seems like everybody will tell you, oh, you got to use the gouges, you got to use the classic tools. Well, I don't hold to that. I turn wood because it's what I like to do. I use the lathe I like. I turn the woods I like. I turn the shapes I like. And like I said, I do it because I like to do it. And if I like to do it, then I'm going to use the tools I like to use. I don't care what anybody says. So I'm going to go ahead and keep on using mostly my Olin tools, but also carbide tools now on a round shaft. Like I said, I don't care much for them on a square shaft. They're not that versatile. And you can buy them now on a round shaft. And this one I got from Banggood, $30. I'm surprised at how really well made the shaft is. Of course, the handle's just a handle. It's functional. If you don't like it, you can change it easy enough. And of course, the carbide bits are changeable. This one I got is the 16 millimeter. Now they sell a lot of them that are 12 millimeter. And I think they've only got one that's 16. Of course, they got the square ones and the diamond shaped ones too. I just got the round one just to see what they were like. Like I said, I'm surprised at how really well made it is. How really good it's machined on the end, and that's what's important. And of course, if you make your own, the hardest thing to do is to get a flat spot on the shaft. If you have access to a milling machine, that's the way to do it. Of course, there's other ways, but you do need a flat spot. And then once you mount the bit, I heard someone say that you need to put a drop of CA glue on it to hold it. Well, I found if you got it sitting good on a flat surface and tightened down, you don't need any glue under it. It ain't going to move. So, like I said, it's a scraping tool, and like any scraping tool, the important thing is the angle between the bit and the wood. If it's less than 90, you're good to go. If you turn it up, you'll get a shear cut. If you get it more than 90, you're in trouble. You're going to get a catch. So it's simple as that. And like I said, I like to use the tools I like to use, and I don't care what anybody says. So if you feel like using carbide tools, use them. And I find they cut just as good as anything else. And the last cut I made on that piece, I took out almost all of the ingrained hair out. And that's soft maple. The fact is, that's figured soft maple. So it's known for tear out. So, I hope you appreciate my little video. And I really appreciate the people that watch. And really appreciate those that subscribe. And come back and see my next video.